Hello everyone, how's it going? My name is Elias. Welcome back. It's been a while, it's been a bit, but in today's video, I'm going to catch you guys up on some of the books that I've been reading lately in the past couple of months. Pretty good, solid list right here. Some of the first books read in 2023. Yes, not sure if you noticed by now, but yes, I am talking about the hair. Literally, the shortest haircut I've ever had on this channel, like in the past 10 years or so. I heard that some people do like Jurassic things because they're depressed. That too, but I decided it was a good change. And actually, I got this like a week and a half ago, and my roots, my black roots, are already showing. Like when I first got it, it was all pink. It was super dark as well. But as time goes on and after every wash, it gets lighter and lighter. So with the lighter pink, it's sort of the look I'm trying to get and achieve. Yeah, there you go. It was a pain, but beauty is pain, as I say. I actually had to freaking bleach my whole head 4 times. And let me tell you, that scalp, this whole head, damaged, dry, it was death. Okay, but thankfully, I got through it. So, oh, and I also have some really cool announcements coming up, which I'm not going to go into here. That will be for another video, as well as something over on Instagram. But I'm pretty excited. It's something new, something I've never done before, you know? So before we get further into the video, I would like to thank today's video sponsor, Book of the Month. Ooh, so they have a different type of box this time coming around. If you didn't know what Book of the Month is, they're essentially a book subscription service where you get to choose through a selection of 5 to 7 books every month. And those selection of books are specifically curated from a huge list of new and early release titles so that you can spend more time reading and less time researching. What's really great about Book of the Month though is that if you're not feeling the vibe or the selection for that particular month, you can totally skip risk-free. Absolute thing about BOTM is that they have the best prices for any newly released hardcover fiction out there. So if you guys are interested, I have a personalized code, which is my name, Elias, where you can get your first book for only $9.99. All right, with that being said, let's take a look at the 2 selections that I chose. The first one up being The Soulmate by Sally Hepworth. This primarily follows a young British couple who move to a house that's literally right next to a cliffside. So the husband, Gabe, and his wife, Pippa, which is literally the most British name ever, her husband has saved essentially every person that he has come across on this cliffside. That's Pyrrha, by the way, playing in the background. Her husband has saved every person that he has encountered on this cliffside, until one day he doesn't. And then all of a sudden, Pippa's doubts begin to manifest, and she's like, husband of mine, darling, since you did not save this person, I'm doubting you. You know, did you really push her? Did you know her? Oh my god, we're gonna stop there. But essentially, she begins to doubt him. So we have a really simple and basic trope here. Is your husband hiding something? Did he know the victim? Is that why he didn't save her? And yada yada. Alright, so the next book that I chose was The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. This is also the same author as The City of Brass, and I've heard nothing but great things for that trilogy. She has a new fantasy series out, and I'm really interested in reading this because it's about pirates, sorcerers, forbidden artifacts, and hidden mysteries, and so I'm definitely here for it. And those are the selections. Everything will be linked down below, and thank you once again to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. The first book of 2023 is The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. If you didn't know, this is part of an ongoing series, a franchise from The Cool Prince, which has taken Book Talk and BookTube ablaze. This whole series, in of itself, is extremely popular, and I, for one, have pretty much enjoyed every subsequent book. But The Stolen Heir is a spin-off that primarily follows the life and the adventures of the youngest baby, the brother of the sister who is the main character of the previous trilogy, if you will. That was a lot. So in this one, he is sort of grown, coming into kingdom, coming into the king of this entire kingdom. We also follow the love interest, who is sort of our main central character. And in this one, I believe the roles are sort of reversed, whereas in the original trilogy, with Cardan and Jude, I think the dynamics in that trilogy has been swapped in this first book, which I also believe is the first in a duology. What's really cool about this one is that instead of following like a human central figure, we follow instead a mythical creature. Surin, our main character, is a creature from the fairy realm who was actually adopted by a human family but taken back to fairyland by her fae parents. However, she also has this really cool ability to see and break curses as well, which I won't really get into because there are a lot of fun surprises regarding that skill set that she has. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I really liked where the story went with all of these characters and a lot of new characters and events that popped up along the way as well, just because I was wondering what other stories Holly Black would tell in the same universe from the beloved original trilogy, which pretty much everyone has read and loved. Oh, and what was really funny about this one is that I had no idea absolutely zero knowledge of this book's release. I didn't even know Ollie Black was writing another book in this universe in the first place. And I think it was like a week or a few days before the actual release of this book that I found out. And I was like, what the fuck? And I was shocked because I would have thought this book would have blown up in the same way that the original trilogy did. But I don't know, maybe I'm behind or on the wrong side of like getting book recommendations or book updates or news or whatever because literally had no idea that this book was out. At the end of the day, 4 to 5. All right, so the next set of books that I read are from The Ancient Mage's Bride, and this is volumes 10 and 11. So if you or someone was really into anime or manga and asked me what was my favorite series of all time, this would be that series. For those who are struggling to find that similar itch when you complete and watch a Studio Ghibli film, and you want to get that same feeling, those nostalgic, beautiful vibes, this series, in a nutshell, the anime at least, has one of the most breathtaking visuals I've ever seen in any anime. So if you're looking for that like magical, whimsical aspect of Studio Ghibli and that vibe, I can't even begin to tell you how beautiful and just overall whimsical and magical this whole series is. So this series itself is full of like folklore, magic, mythologies, different paranormal, supernatural creatures, and all of that told within a super simple but really interesting story setting. So it primarily follows this character who is a sleigh buggy who can sort of amplify and perform different types and sets of magic and alchemy. And so within that context, within that world, our main character slowly discovers the good, the bad, and the joys of life. It does take place within the real world, which is super interesting seeing how all the creatures and everyone in the series navigates the supernatural and the human aspect within this world. And so yeah, I thought that was really interesting, but I highly definitely recommend reading the manga and watching the anime. So there you go. Also, season 2 for the series is coming out, I believe, in the next couple of months or so, which I'm so excited because I could not even begin to imagine how long I've been waiting for a second season. It's been years at this point, but hey, every year a rewatch is a must and every watch through is just perfection. So there you go. So next I read Silver in the Wood by Emily Tesh. And this one, in a nutshell, so short, so simple, and so fucking sweet. So it primarily follows this gruff old man. Well, I don't want to say old. He's like a daddy, if you will, right? He's living in this cabin, this rustic cabin with his, his flannel and his jacket and his axe. Embellishing here, right? This one takes place, I don't know, eons before I was born, maybe like in the 1400s. Anyways, it's old, right? And he's daddy, and he's living in this cabin in the middle of the forest, in the middle of the woods. And this guy, there's something not entirely human about him. He can talk to dryads. He performs these really odd, strange rituals that keeps the forest, the trees, as well as the humans in nearby villages safe. But anyways, one day, a rather cute, sunshine-loving golden retriever type of guy stumbles upon Tobias's cabin. Tobias is the name of the daddy. But anyways, our sunshine puppy-loving guy, his name is Henry. And Henry is taken aback with Tobias. It's like love at first sight. And that's pretty much all I'm gonna say. It's really short. It's literally, I believe, clocking in at 100 pages. Almost exact, I think. 105 pages. I flew through this. I actually appreciated how short it was, even though this is the type of story where I could see it being like fully fleshed out in like a bigger and longer novel. But I'm pretty happy overall with this sort of sentiment this book has to offer. It was just really warm, really sweet reading about the relationship between these two men and the mysterious circumstances regarding Tobias, the main character, and the forest surrounding him, and who he is, what he is, why he got into the circumstance that he is in now. And don't get me wrong, for a 100-page book, there is plenty of mystery and intrigue to go a long way. So I believe this is also the first of a duology as well, and so I'm really looking forward to reading that one. The next short book or novella that I read is The Strange Library by Haruki Murakami. This was my first Murakami book that I read. Honestly, I feel like there wasn't enough for me to even get a taste of what his writing is truly like. For my first Murakami book, unfortunately, it didn't really leave much of an impression on me. I mean, the writing to me, first of all, it pretty much took a back seat when it came to this book, just because for the majority of this book, I feel like it's more of like a visual sensation than anything else, because it deals a lot with like pictures and just feelings overall than I feel like an actual book, Visually, it was stunning. Probably the best aspect of this book and arguably its strongest. The story itself is pretty short and pretty simple, but the basic premise of this book follows a young boy who goes into this library to return a book, only to find himself being kidnapped and taken to prison, along with a girl who signs and talks with her hands, and another man who can make delicious donuts who wears sheepskin for clothes. At the end of this book, I feel like I could see the allegory and the parallels of grief and dealing with grief and how that can all affect someone mentally and physically. But I feel like at the end of the day, this feels like a fairy tale that's like left unfinished. Like it had such a great start and it was visually arresting, but the end was so abrupt and just so sudden that it didn't really make much sense to me. I don't know, who knows? Maybe I'm not absorbing or taking in the message of this book as well as other people. To me, the ending was the weakest link. I mean, don't get me wrong. In the end, this book was interesting to look at and to read. There are like these different interludes, like different text, different key images like feathers, keys, food, fruits, and all that. And it was just really chaotic, sort of contrasting to the writing of the story, I guess you could say. But you know what? I really feel like Murakami was either rolling or just really high when he wrote this. I'm just going to leave it at that. So there you go. Ultimately give this a strong 2.75, rounding up to a 3 out of 5, I guess. But I do plan on reading other books from this author because even though he's rather polarizing and a lot of other people have really strong opinions on his work, I still want to read and experience his work for myself. So, all right, so the next book that I read is Clown in the Cornfield 2, Friendo Lives. This one is a YA slasher that is a sequel to one of the better slasher YA books that I read. Where to even begin? I feel like the first half of this book was so strong. It sets up the basic premise where the survivors from the first book have to deal with the turmoil and the aftermath of the events from the first. The first book, pretty much the bloodiest and goriest with the highest body count of any other YA slasher book that I've ever read. I really like it because it's entertaining and to a degree, it's very grounded in a sense where you can totally see it happening in a slasher movie. Like the other YA slashers, I don't really think I could see it. It's like comparing Scream to like the MTV Scream. While both are good, they just have different feels. And I feel like the first book, Clown in a Cornfield, had varying degrees the strong aspects of like a strong Scream movie, like a slasher movie in general. Speaking of, it's being made into a slasher movie as well. So I'm really looking forward to it because the kills in that one, so gory and so fun. Whereas this one, oh man, I wanted to love this. I feel like I said before, to reiterate, the strong half was so strong, but then it fell apart for me towards the middle and at the end. The story and the characters sort of lost themselves sort of in the middle, and it just ultimately fell apart. However, I do like the idea of how like a mob mentality can really be dangerous, even more than the actual killer themselves, you know? That whole aspect was really interesting, really intriguing to read about, especially that's incorporated in a slasher. I feel like, for one, this book went on for far too long. It's pretty much 400 pages. I really liked exploring some of the older characters again, as well as the other survivors or people related to the survivors from the events from the first book. It's just really interesting reading from like a different angle from that aspect. So the story primarily follows a young girl who moves with her doctor dad to this really small Midwestern town. However, not even within a week of settling down in this like small ass town, our main character, along with pretty much the entire high school population, gets targeted by this killer clown. I believe there is a third book coming out as well. I'm not too sure how he's gonna pull it off. I think if this book just ended where it was, I would have been totally fine with it. There is a third book coming out, so I guess we'll have to see how that one does. But aside from that, I'm also gonna give this a 2.75, rounding up to a 3 for me. Okay, so last but not least, we have Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So it has been a while since I read Taylor last. The last book that I read from Taylor was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I loved. So for this book, I listened to the entirety on audiobook. And let me tell you, it's pretty much the best way to read it. So I did actually go through on my second time, didn't read it, but I skimmed through, just to see the physical representation of this book. But I do think the audiobook, for me, reigns supreme. The audiobook just hits different. There's also a full cast of characters, which I thought really elevated the story overall. And honestly, it was just how they portrayed and told the story. It was almost like voice acting in a way. Like they would stop and pause for dramatic effect or at dramatic scenes, like even add in layers of emotion and depth. Don't get me wrong though, I wasn't really hooked into the book until like 3/4 of the way. There were some parts in the book where I was like, man, this might be a 3-star read because the middle dragged a bit and I wasn't sure where this was going, right? However, it wasn't until the very last section of the book, I believe I had like maybe 2 pages left, that really hit it home for me. I was like, okay, this is a 4-star for me because this book had truly one of the most satisfying endings I've ever read because it was just so satisfying and concrete in every way because you just knew, okay? If you know, you know. But overall, another successful Taylor Jenkins Reid book. Is it my favorite? No, because I'm giving this 4 to 5 stars. And I do know that there's an Amazon show coming out as well, which Cindy and I might react to. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I can definitely see why everyone loves this book as much as they do because it hits. It does hit. All right, so that's pretty much it for this reading wrap up. Please let me know down in the comments below what you guys have been recently reading. What books have you enjoyed, hated, liked, disliked? I would love to know. And don't forget to stay tuned for a couple of cool announcements coming up. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all soon with a new video.